The lights glittered softly over the grand ballroom, casting a warm glow on the elegantly dressed guests. Laughter echoed around me, champagne glasses clinked in the air, and everything seemed perfect, at least on the surface. Laura stood beside me, radiant as always, her laughter mingling with the others as she charmed her way through the crowd. We were at another one of those high society events, surrounded by familiar faces, friends we had known for years. But as I stood there, watching her flirt with the people around her, something inside me had shifted. I knew her secret. It had been just a week since I discovered the truth. One careless mistake, one forgotten phone on the kitchen counter, and everything came crashing down. Laura had always been careful, calculating even. But that day, she'd left her phone behind, and curiosity got the better of me. I wasn't expecting much, maybe a few innocent messages, a dinner plan, the usual small talk. But what I found shattered the world I thought I knew. Her texts with Rick, our friend, were anything but innocent. My hands had clenched into fists as I read their exchanges. Flirty banter, plans to meet up when I was busy, their so-called business lunches. My pulse quickened, but instead of confronting her, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I realized that a confrontation would be pointless. Laura would deny it, make excuses, twist the truth until I was the one feeling guilty. She was too smart, too manipulative for a direct attack. No, I had to be smarter. I had to play this right. So there I stood, at the party, pretending nothing was wrong. I was the same old Matt, attentive, loving, the perfect husband. But deep down, I was already setting the stage for what was to come. My mind raced as I sipped my drink, formulating a plan, one that would turn Laura's betrayal into her downfall. It started with a small comment. We were standing in a circle with a few close friends, the kind of people who thrived on gossip. Laura's been spending a lot of time with Rick lately, I said casually, with a faint smile. I made it sound like an innocent observation, but I could see the subtle reactions in their eyes. It was a spark, nothing more, but I knew it would catch fire soon enough. Laura didn't notice. She was too busy laughing, too busy being the center of attention. But I could feel the shift. People always noticed these things, even if they didn't say it outright. I didn't need to push, the seed had been planted. As the night went on, I continued to play the role of the loving husband. I held Laura's hand, smiled at her, whispered sweet nothings in her ear. To anyone watching, we were the perfect couple. But I knew better. I was waiting, watching as the first rumors began to swirl around us, subtle at first, but inevitable. That night, as we left the party, Laura leaned into me, her arm looped through mine. She looked up at me with that same charming smile she had always used to get what she wanted. "Did you have fun tonight?" she asked, her voice sweet, almost affectionate. I smiled back, pretending everything was fine. Of course, I lied. It was perfect. But as we walked to the car, I felt a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. She didn't know it yet, but her world was about to unravel. And I would be there, every step of the way, making sure it did. The game had begun. A week had passed since the party, and things at home were as smooth as ever. Laura moved through her days as if nothing had changed, still charming, still socializing with our mutual friends. And still sneaking off to meetings. She was confident, unaware that the foundation of her perfect world was already beginning to crack. I played my role well. At dinners, I smiled, made light conversation, and made sure to subtly plant doubts among our friends. It was a delicate game, one that required patience. You don't destroy someone's life overnight, especially someone as entrenched in our social circle as Laura. But the whispers had already started, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they reached her. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I had my first real confirmation that my plan was working. I was at a lunch meeting with Robert, one of our mutual friends. Robert was the kind of guy who loved a good scandal, always keeping an ear to the ground for the latest gossip. We were halfway through our meal, talking about nothing in particular, when he leaned in with that conspiratorial look he always got when something juicy was on his mind. "So, Matt," he said, swirling his glass of wine. "I've been hearing some things about Laura and Rick. You know, they've been spending a lot of time together lately." I acted surprised, but not too much. I had to play this just right. "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow, putting on my best impression of casual concern. "I know they've been meeting for work stuff, but what have you heard?" Robert smirked, pleased that he had my attention. "Well, nothing concrete. Just talk, you know? People have noticed. A few lunches here and there, a couple of late-night drinks. You know how it is. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a sigh that sounded more resigned than upset. Yeah, I've noticed. It's probably nothing, though, right? I mean, Rick's a friend. Robert gave me a look that said everything. He wasn't convinced, and neither was anyone else. The seed I'd planted at the party had sprouted, and the rumors were spreading just as I'd hoped. But I couldn't appear too eager, not yet. Yeah, I'm sure it's nothing, I said with a forced smile, as if I was trying to convince myself. Laura and I have been a bit distant lately, though. Maybe people are just reading into things. It was the perfect touch, not accusing, but not entirely dismissing the idea either. I let Robert fill in the blanks himself, and by the look on his face, he was already spinning his own version of events in his head. Yeah, well, you know how people talk, Robert said, leaning back with a knowing nod. But if you ask me, there's always a little truth in gossip. I smiled weakly, pretending to brush it off. Yeah, maybe, but thanks for telling me, Rob. I appreciate it. As the lunch ended, I walked away knowing that Robert wouldn't be able to keep this to himself. He'd spread the word, just as I wanted him to. And from there, it would grow. Every whisper would add weight to the story, making it harder and harder for Laura to explain herself. By the time I got home that evening, I was almost looking forward to watching it all unfold. Laura was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine, looking completely unbothered by the world around her. She glanced up at me as I walked in, giving me that same practiced smile she always did. "How was lunch?" she asked, not really caring about the answer. "Good," I replied, kissing her on the forehead. "Caught up with Robert. He says hi." She nodded, uninterested, and went back to her magazine. I watched her for a moment, wondering how long it would take before she started noticing the shift. Before she realized that the same friends who had once adored her were now looking at her with suspicion. It wouldn't be long now. I moved to the kitchen to pour myself a drink, feeling that familiar rush of satisfaction. The game was in motion, and everything was going according to plan. As I stood there, sipping my whiskey, I couldn't help but smile. The whispers were growing, and soon, they would be impossible for Laura to ignore. It didn't take long for the whispers to spread. The subtle looks, the quiet pauses in conversation when Laura walked into a room, the casual mentions of Rick's name, all of it was falling into place. I could see the change, feel the tension whenever we attended one of our social events. The rumors I had so carefully seeded were growing roots, and Laura, for the first time, seemed to sense that something was off. It was a Friday evening, and we were at another dinner party. This one was hosted by the Thompsons, an influential couple in our circle. Their parties were always well attended, and tonight was no exception. As we entered, Laura was all smiles, greeting everyone with her usual charm. But I could see it, the way some of the women gave her a once-over, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes, their voices a bit too measured. The men weren't much better, their conversations with her short and slightly guarded. I played my role perfectly, staying close to Laura but not too close, exchanging knowing glances with the others, as if I were the one holding a painful secret. I wanted them to think that I was trying to hold things together, that I was the victim of a wife who had clearly crossed the line. About halfway through the night, as we stood in a small group talking, one of the women, Jennifer, couldn't help but bring up Rick. It was subtle, the way she worked it into the conversation, but it was enough. "So, Laura," Jennifer began, swirling her wine, "I ran into Rick the other day. He mentioned you two have been working on some project together? Must be exciting, all those late meetings." I watched as Laura stiffened slightly, her smile faltering for just a second. She quickly recovered. Of course, she always did. "Oh, yes, Rick and I have been collaborating on some things for work," she said smoothly, brushing it off. "Nothing too exciting, just business." But Jennifer wasn't finished. "Funny, he didn't mention it was all work. I think he said something about drinks after a few of those meetings. You know, to unwind." She smiled innocently, but the implication was clear, and everyone in the circle felt it. Laura's face tightened, just barely, and I could see the first flicker of panic behind her eyes. She glanced at me, probably expecting me to jump in, to support her, to say something that would dismiss the growing suspicions. But I didn't. Instead, I took a sip of my drink, letting the silence hang for a moment before offering a soft, almost resigned smile. "Well," I said, my voice quiet but carrying enough weight for everyone to hear, "I'm sure it's nothing." Rick's a good friend. And Laura's always been loyal, at least, I hope so. The mood shifted immediately. Laura's eyes widened, a mix of shock and betrayal flashing across her face. The others exchanged glances, and I could see the gears turning in their heads. I had just given them permission to believe the rumors. Laura quickly regained her composure, laughing it off. Of course, I am. Come on, Matt, you're not really buying into this nonsense, are you? But her laughter was strained, forced. The damage was done. As the evening wore on, I could feel Laura growing more anxious. She was trying harder than usual to engage people in conversation, to keep up appearances, but the shift in the air was undeniable. Our friends were more distant, polite but cold. The few people who still spoke with her did so out of obligation, not genuine interest. Laura was becoming an outsider, and she could sense it. By the time we got home, she was seething. The moment the door closed behind us, she turned to me, her face a mix of anger and confusion. What the hell was that, Matt? She snapped, her voice trembling slightly. Why didn't you say something? Why did you make it sound like you don't trust me? I shrugged, walking past her toward the kitchen. What do you want me to say, Laura? You've been spending a lot of time with Rick. People are starting to talk. I can't control what they think. She followed me, her footsteps sharp against the floor. You can't control what they think? You're my husband. You're supposed to defend me. You made it sound like I've done something wrong. I poured myself a drink, my back to her. Have you? The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I didn't turn around to see her reaction, but I could feel the weight of her silence. She didn't answer, and that was enough for me. After a moment, I finally turned to face her. She stood there, arms crossed, her expression a mix of frustration and desperation. Matt, this is ridiculous. I haven't done anything with Rick. We're just friends. Maybe, I said, taking a slow sip of my whiskey. But people are starting to think otherwise. And honestly, Laura, I don't know what to believe anymore. The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of disbelief and fear. She had always been in control, always the one with the upper hand. But now, she was starting to realize that things were slipping through her fingers. She stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I stood there for a while, savoring the moment. This was just the beginning. The ripple effect had started, and it was only going to get worse for her from here. I had set the stage, and now I just had to watch as her perfect life unraveled, piece by piece. The days that followed were a whirlwind of tension and suspicion. The rumors about Laura and Rick had picked up momentum, and the ripple effect I had started was quickly turning into a full-blown storm. People who had once been friendly and warm were now distant, their smiles polite but hollow. The once vibrant social life that Laura had enjoyed was now fraught with whispers and sideways glances. It was a Saturday afternoon when the full impact of my plan began to hit home. We were invited to a charity gala, one of those high-profile events where the city's elite gathered to make small talk and show off their best. I knew it would be the perfect venue for the rumors to continue spreading. Laura was determined to put on a brave face, but I could see the strain beneath her practiced smile. As we arrived at the gala, the grand hall was filled with the usual glitter and glamour. Laura tried to engage with our acquaintances, but the reception was lukewarm. Her attempts to be charming were met with cold politeness, and I could see the frustration building in her. I stayed close, offering support but never overtly defending her. My role was to observe and let the situation unfold naturally. During the evening, as we mingled with the guests, I could hear snippets of conversation that made it clear the rumors were not only sticking but growing. At one point, I overheard a conversation between two women, Emily and Laura, who were discussing Laura's recent behavior. I heard she and Rick were seen together at that new bistro downtown, Emily said, her voice low and conspiratorial. Seems like it's more than just work. Laura nodded, her expression serious. And I've heard they've been seen out late, just the two of them. It's a shame, really. Laura always seemed so devoted. I made sure to catch their eyes, offering a sympathetic but reserved smile. I knew that by allowing these conversations to happen, I was only reinforcing the doubts that were already taking root in the minds of our friends. Laura approached us, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness. Matt, darling, I think it's time for us to make our exit. She said, trying to sound casual. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I nodded, noting the exhaustion in her eyes. Of course, sweetheart. Let's go. As we left the gala, I could feel the weight of her distress. She was silent in the car, staring out the window as the city lights passed by. The social scene that had once been her domain was now closing in on her, and she knew it. When we got home, she wasted no time confronting me. As soon as we walked through the door, she turned to me, her frustration boiling over. "Matt, this has gone too far," she said, her voice sharp. "I can't take this anymore. The way people are looking at me, the way they're treating me. It's unbearable." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I don't know what you're talking about, Laura. You're just imagining things." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Imagining things? Are you kidding me? I've seen the way they're reacting. They think I'm unfaithful. And it's all because of you." I shook my head, trying to look innocent. "Me? I haven't said a word. People talk, and you know how it is. Once a rumor starts, it spreads. You've just got to deal with it." She stared at me, her eyes searching for any sign of guilt. But I gave her none. I had been careful, meticulous, making sure my actions were always indirect. "This isn't right," she said, her voice trembling. "You need to fix this. You need to tell everyone that it's not true." I shook my head. "I can't control what people think, Laura. If they've come to their own conclusions, there's not much I can do about it." Her shoulders slumped, and she sank into a chair, looking defeated. "I don't know how much more of this I can take." I watched her for a moment, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. She had been so sure of herself, so in control. But now, she was vulnerable, and I was the one holding all the cards. As the days went by, things only got worse. Laura's attempts to salvage her social life were futile. Invitations to events dried up, and the few people who did reach out did so with a distant politeness. It was clear that the damage was done. The social fabric that Laura had once navigated with ease was now tearing apart, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Each night, as I watched her struggle, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. My plan was working, and Laura's world was crumbling, just as I had intended. She was becoming a pariah in the very society that had once celebrated her. And I knew that the worst was yet to come. The social fallout from the gala was more severe than I anticipated. Laura's attempts to salvage her reputation had been in vain. Every effort she made only seemed to confirm the rumors rather than dispel them. The whispers had become a roar, and now the walls of our once perfect world were crumbling. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Laura decided to confront me with a new level of desperation. She had been out all morning, running from one social engagement to another, trying to mend fences and prove her innocence. But from the looks of things, her efforts had only made her situation worse. When she came home, her face was flushed with a mix of anger and exhaustion. I was in the study, working on some documents, when she stormed in, clearly agitated. "Matt, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "This has gone too far. I've tried everything, and nothing is working." I looked up from my papers, feigning surprise. "What do you mean, Laura? I thought things were settling down." "Settling down?" she nearly shouted, her frustration evident. "The more I try to clear my name, the worse it gets. People are avoiding me, whispering behind my back. It's like I'm some kind of pariah." I stood up, leaning against the desk, and crossed my arms. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I don't know what you expect me to do. The rumors are out there. I can't control what other people say." Laura's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're kidding, right? You're the one who started all this. You let those rumors spread. You've done nothing to stop them." I kept my expression neutral. "I don't see how that's my fault. I'm not responsible for what people think or say. If they've come to their own conclusions, that's beyond my control." Her face turned red with anger. "Beyond your control? You're the one who's been feeding the rumors, subtly encouraging them. You're manipulating everyone to make me look bad. I can't believe I trusted you." I took a deep breath, letting her words wash over me. I had anticipated this confrontation, and I was prepared. "Laura, calm down. You're letting your emotions get the better of you. I haven't done anything to harm you." "You haven't done anything?" she shot back, her voice cracking. "You've let this entire mess spiral out of control. You've turned our friends against me, and now you're pretending to be the innocent one." I walked towards her, maintaining a calm demeanor. "Laura, you need to see the bigger picture. People talk. They always do. It's not my fault if they've drawn their own conclusions based on what they've seen." Her eyes were brimming with tears, and she looked like she was on the verge of breaking down. "What do you want from me, Matt? Why are you doing this?" I sighed, putting on a sympathetic expression. All I want is for us to move past this. Maybe you should take some time away from the social scene, let things cool down. It might help to give people some space. Her jaw tightened, and she glared at me. Take time away? You mean isolate myself while you enjoy watching me suffer? This is cruel, Matt. I never thought you'd be capable of this. I shook my head slowly. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm just dealing with the situation as best as I can. If you can't handle the pressure, maybe it's time for a change. She collapsed into a nearby chair, burying her face in her hands. The sight of her despair was almost too much to bear, but I forced myself to remain impassive. This was the result I had been working towards, and every moment of her suffering was a testament to my success. I don't know what to do, she whispered through her tears. I don't know how to fix this. I approached her and placed a hand on her shoulder, speaking in a softer tone. You don't have to fix it alone. Maybe it's time to take a step back and reconsider your priorities. Focus on what's truly important, and maybe things will start to turn around. She looked up at me, her eyes swollen and red. You're just enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me struggle while you sit back and pretend to be the supportive husband. I forced a reassuring smile. I'm only trying to help. I want what's best for both of us. And sometimes, that means making difficult choices. Laura shook her head, standing up and walking towards the bedroom. I can't deal with this right now. I need space. As she left, I stood there, feeling a mix of satisfaction and emptiness. The confrontation had been inevitable. And it had played out exactly as I had planned. Laura was broken, her confidence shattered, and her social standing in ruins. I knew that the final phase of my plan was approaching. The social isolation would only increase, and Laura's ability to salvage her life was rapidly diminishing. It was only a matter of time before she would have no choice but to face the reality I had created for her. For now, I watched as she retreated to her room, her world collapsing around her. The endgame was in sight. And I was ready for the final act. Laura's retreat into isolation was a crucial turning point. The emotional toll of the last few weeks had left her reeling, and now the impact of my carefully orchestrated plan was evident. Her attempts to salvage her reputation had only resulted in further alienation, and her once vibrant social life was now a ghost of its former self. It was a rainy Thursday morning when I knew things had reached a breaking point. Laura had taken to spending most of her time in our bedroom, emerging only when absolutely necessary. She rarely ventured outside, and when she did, it was with a palpable sense of dread. Her social calendar was empty, and the phone calls and invitations that used to fill her days had all but ceased. That morning, as I sipped my coffee and read the newspaper in the kitchen, I heard her moving around in the bedroom. The sound of shuffling feet and the soft murmur of her voice, talking to herself, filled the silence of the house. It was a stark contrast to the confident, poised woman who had once ruled our social circle. After a while, I decided to check on her. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the floor. The room was dimly lit, and she looked like she hadn't slept well in days. Her eyes were hollow, and her demeanor was a far cry from the woman who had once commanded every room she entered. Morning, I said gently, leaning against the doorframe. How are you feeling today? She looked up, her expression weary. I'm fine, she said, her voice lacking its usual conviction. Just trying to get through the day. I walked over and sat beside her on the bed, trying to offer comfort without being too intrusive. I know it's been rough. Maybe it's time to think about taking a break from all of this. Get away for a while, clear your head. Her gaze shifted to me, her eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and sadness. A break? You mean run away from all the mess you've created? I don't even know where I go. No one wants to see me anymore. I placed a hand on her shoulder, speaking softly. That's not what I meant. I just think it might help to take some time for yourself. Away from the social scene, away from the pressures. She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know how to fix this, Matt. I've tried everything, and nothing seems to work. It feels like no matter what I do, the damage is already done. I gave her a sympathetic smile, though inside, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The isolation I had worked so hard to achieve was now complete. She was cut off from her friends, her social network, and even the few people who still cared were growing distant. Her world was collapsing in on itself, and there was nothing left for her but the walls of our home. You don't have to fix it alone, I said, my voice filled with false reassurance. Maybe it's time to reach out to a professional, someone who can help you work through all of this." She looked at me, her eyes searching for any hint of sincerity. "You really think that will help?" I nodded slowly. "It's worth a try. Sometimes, talking to someone can provide a new perspective. It might help you start to heal." She looked away, her gaze falling to the floor. "Maybe you're right. I don't know what else to do." I watched her as she struggled with her emotions. The isolation had taken its toll, and she was beginning to crack under the pressure. It was a painful sight, but it was the culmination of the plan I had set in motion. Her confidence, her social standing, her sense of self, all of it had been systematically dismantled. Later that day, Laura made an appointment with a therapist, a small but significant step in her attempt to regain some control over her life. I could see the relief in her eyes, even if it was fleeting. She was desperate for anything that might offer a glimmer of hope, and I was determined to ensure that hope was as elusive as possible. As the days went by, Laura continued with her therapy sessions, trying to piece together the fragments of her shattered life. The isolation remained, though. Her attempts to reconnect with friends were met with polite but distant responses. The rumors had taken on a life of their own, and the social circles she had once navigated with ease were now impenetrable. I continued to play my part, offering support and encouragement while subtly reinforcing the notion that she was still at fault. I made sure to let her know that while I was there for her, I had my own doubts, my own concerns. It was all part of the act, a way to keep her off balance and maintain the upper hand. The isolation was complete, and with it, Laura's world had become a bleak, solitary place. Her attempts to rebuild were met with resistance, and the weight of her situation was becoming increasingly apparent. She was trapped in a cycle of despair, and I was the one holding the keys to her liberation, or rather, the keys to her continued suffering. As I watched her struggle, I knew the endgame was approaching. Her social life was in ruins, her confidence shattered, and her once proud demeanor reduced to a shadow of its former self. The final act was near, and I was ready to see it through to its conclusion. Weeks had passed since Laura's isolation had reached its peak. The therapy sessions had become a routine part of her life, but they did little to mend the rift that had grown between her and the world. Her attempts to reconnect with friends had been met with cold indifference. And the whispers about her and Rick continued to echo through the social circles we once moved in. The fallout was becoming increasingly evident. The dinner parties and charity events that had once been a staple of our social life were now distant memories. Invitations had ceased entirely, and even the few people who had once been her closest allies had retreated into the background. Laura's social standing was in tatters, and she was left to navigate a world that seemed to have turned its back on her. It was a Sunday afternoon when the final blow came. Laura had been trying to make plans for weeks, reaching out to anyone who might offer a glimmer of normalcy. She had even started calling old friends, hoping to rekindle some semblance of her former life. But the responses she received were uniformly cold and dismissive. That day, she sat at the kitchen table, clutching her phone and staring at the list of names she had called. Each message, each voicemail, was met with a polite but final, "We're busy right now," or "maybe another time." The realization that her social circle had completely disintegrated was sinking in. I watched her from the doorway, a mixture of satisfaction and pity settling over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the final unraveling of her life. The isolation was complete, and now it was time for Laura to face the full extent of her situation. She put the phone down, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Her eyes were red, and her face was etched with the exhaustion of constant rejection. It was clear that she was on the verge of breaking down, and I knew that this was the perfect opportunity to make my move. I walked over and sat beside her, placing a hand on her back in a gesture that was meant to be comforting but felt more like a cold calculation. "Laura, I think it's time we had a serious talk." She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "What is there left to talk about, Matt? Everything's fallen apart. My life is a mess, and I don't know how to fix it." I took a deep breath, maintaining an air of calm. "I understand that this is difficult, but maybe it's time to face the truth about what's happened." She nodded, her face a mask of resignation. "What truth? That my friends have turned their backs on me? That I've become a social outcast?" I looked at her, trying to appear empathetic. "Yes, but there's more to it than just losing your friends. The damage to your reputation has been significant. It's not just about how people view you now, it's about the long-term impact this will have on your life. Quote. Laura's eyes widened in realization. Are you saying there's no way to fix this? That it's over? I nodded slowly. I think it's important to recognize that rebuilding what you had may not be possible. The rumors have spread too far, and the damage has been done. You may need to consider a different path forward. Her shoulders shook with suppressed sobs, and she looked at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. You've been behind this all along, haven't you? You've been orchestrating everything to make sure I ended up like this. Quote. I stayed calm, keeping my tone steady. Laura, it's not about placing blame. It's about facing reality. If we're going to move forward, we need to accept the situation for what it is and find a new way to deal with it. She buried her face in her hands, her sobs coming more freely now. I don't know how to start over. I don't even know where to begin. I reached over and took her hand, trying to offer comfort while maintaining my control. We can figure it out together. There are options, but they require a fresh perspective. Maybe a new location, a new environment might help you start anew. She looked up, her face tear-streaked and weary. You mean leave everything behind and start over somewhere else? I nodded. Sometimes, a fresh start is the only way to rebuild. It might be the best solution given the circumstances. Laura stared at me, her expression a mix of hope and despair. It was clear that she was considering the possibility, but the weight of her past was still heavy on her shoulders. The idea of starting over was daunting, but it was also a way to escape the wreckage that had been left behind. As she absorbed my words, I knew that the final phase of my plan was complete. The fallout from the social destruction I had orchestrated had left Laura at a crossroads. She could either accept the new reality and attempt to rebuild her life from scratch or continue to struggle in a world that had turned against her. I watched her with a sense of detached satisfaction. The damage was done, and her world had been irrevocably altered. The final act of this drama was now unfolding, and I was ready to see it through to the end. It was a chilly, overcast morning when Laura and I packed up the last of our belongings. The decision to leave was one she had reluctantly accepted after much debate and many tearful conversations. Our home, once filled with laughter and social gatherings, now felt like a mausoleum of our past lives. The walls seemed to echo with the remnants of a world that had slipped away. We were heading to a smaller town where I had arranged for us to stay in a modest rental home. It was a significant change from our previous life, but it was designed to offer Laura a chance at a fresh start away from the social whirlpool that had consumed her. As we loaded the last box into the moving truck, Laura looked around at the house we were leaving behind, her face a mixture of sadness and resignation. She was quiet, her usual chatter replaced by a contemplative silence. Are you ready? I asked, trying to keep my tone upbeat. She nodded, though her expression remained somber. Ready as I'll ever be. The drive to our new home was long and quiet. Laura sat beside me, staring out the window as the landscape changed from the familiar urban sprawl to the more tranquil and rural scenery. I could see her trying to adjust to the idea of leaving behind everything she had known for this new, uncharted territory. When we finally arrived at the rental house, it was a small, charming cottage on the outskirts of town. It was a far cry from the elegant, spacious home we had left behind, but it was cozy and quaint, offering a different kind of comfort. Laura stepped out of the car and took a deep breath of the fresh, country air. It's different, she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I smiled reassuringly. Different can be good. It's a chance for us to start anew, away from all the noise and distractions. We spent the next few days unpacking and settling into our new surroundings. Laura busied herself with arranging furniture and decorating the house, trying to make it feel like home. I watched her with a mix of detachment and satisfaction. This was the final stage of my plan, the new beginning for her, away from the life she once knew. As the days turned into weeks, Laura began to adjust to her new environment. The small town was a stark contrast to the bustling city life she had left behind. The pace was slower, and the social scene was vastly different. She found solace in the quiet, in the simplicity of her new surroundings. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch enjoying the view of the rolling hills, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful expression. You know, this place isn't so bad. It's peaceful. Maybe this change was what I needed. I nodded, maintaining a facade of support. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what we need to find ourselves again. She smiled faintly, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. It's just hard to let go of everything I had. The friends, the social life. It feels like a part of me is missing. I reached over and took her hand. It takes time to adjust. You'll find new connections, new routines. It's all part of the process. In the following months, Laura began to explore her new town. She joined a local book club, took up gardening, and even started volunteering at a community center. The small, incremental changes were helping her rebuild a sense of normalcy and purpose. I watched her progress with a sense of detachment, knowing that this new chapter was a direct result of the intricate plan I had set in motion. Despite the positive changes, there were still moments of doubt and sadness. Laura would sometimes sit alone, staring out at the landscape, lost in thought. I knew that the scars of the past would remain, but my role was to ensure that they became part of her new reality, rather than something she could easily escape. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful look. "Matt, do you ever think about what we left behind? The life we had?" I looked at her, carefully choosing my words. "Sometimes, but I believe that every change brings new opportunities. We're in a new place now, and we have a chance to build something different." She nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and lingering pain. "I guess you're right. It's just going to take time to get used to it." As the days continued to pass, Laura's adjustment to her new life became more pronounced. The pain of the past slowly faded into the background as she forged a new path for herself. It was a long and challenging journey, but she was beginning to find her footing in this new chapter. The final phase of my plan had been executed with precision. Laura's social life was in ruins, her world had been irrevocably altered, and she was now navigating a life that was vastly different from the one she had known. The isolation and the fallout had been complete, and the new beginning was a direct consequence of the intricate web of manipulation I had woven. As I watched Laura adapt to her new life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The plan had worked, and the results were evident in every aspect of her transformed existence. The endgame was complete, and the future held new possibilities, both for her and for me. Months had passed since we settled into our new life in the quaint, small town. Laura was making strides, slowly integrating herself into the community and finding small joys in her new routine. The fresh start had offered her a semblance of peace, but I knew that the repercussions of the past were still lingering just beneath the surface. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, I received a call that would shake the foundations of the life we had tried so hard to rebuild. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the urgency in the caller's voice caught my attention. "Matt, it's Alex," the voice on the other end said. "We need to talk. Something big has happened." Alex was one of my old associates from the social scene we had left behind. We had been in touch sporadically, but this call was unexpected and filled with a sense of urgency. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about Laura," Alex said. "There's been a major development. I think you need to know." My heart skipped a beat. The last thing I needed was more complications, but I knew better than to ignore this call. "All right, what happened?" "There's been a series of articles and social media posts about Laura," Alex explained. "It's not just rumors anymore. It's become a scandal. People are talking, and it's getting a lot of attention." My mind raced as I tried to piece together the implications of this news. The last thing I wanted was for the past to resurface and disrupt the fragile stability we had built. "What kind of attention are we talking about?" Alex's voice was grim. "It's getting serious. The articles are accusing Laura of all sorts of things: unethical behavior, financial misconduct. It's like the rumors from before have been given a new, more damaging life." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was not the kind of attention we needed. "Is there anything else I should know?" "There's more," Alex said. "Some of the people from your old social circle are involved in spreading these stories. It's like a coordinated effort to keep Laura in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons." The realization hit me hard. The web of manipulation I had created was now ensnaring me as well. I had carefully orchestrated Laura's downfall, but I hadn't anticipated that the fallout would come full circle and affect my own life. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, trying to keep my composure. "I'll look into this and see what can be done." After hanging up, I sat in silence, absorbing the weight of the news. The scandal was a nightmare come true. The articles and social media posts would not only reopen old wounds but also risk exposing the intricate plan I had set in motion. My carefully crafted facade of support and detachment could be shattered if the truth came out. I knew I had to act quickly. If the scandal continued to gain momentum, it could jeopardize not only Laura's new life but also my own. I needed to control the narrative and ensure that any repercussions were minimized. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I started reaching out to connections I had maintained from our previous life, trying to understand the extent of the damage and to mitigate the fallout. I contacted a public relations firm, hoping to manage the crisis and prevent further escalation. Laura remained unaware of the full scope of the situation. She was still adapting to her new life, and I was determined to keep it that way. I wanted to protect her from the truth until I had a clear plan in place. One evening, as we were having dinner, I decided to broach the subject with her. I needed to prepare her for the possibility of renewed scrutiny without causing unnecessary panic. "Laura," I said, setting down my fork, "I've been hearing some disturbing news. There are a lot of stories going around about us, and it seems like there's been a new wave of attention." She looked up, her expression a mixture of concern and confusion. "What kind of stories?" "It's hard to say exactly," I replied, carefully choosing my words. "But it seems like some old issues are being brought back into the spotlight. We might be dealing with some negative attention." Her face went pale, and she looked down at her plate. "What does this mean for us?" "I'm working on managing the situation," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "We have a plan in place, and I'm doing everything I can to keep things under control. I don't want you to worry too much. We'll get through this." Laura's eyes were filled with fear and uncertainty. "Are you sure? I don't want to go through another ordeal like the one we had before." I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll handle it together, I promise. I just need you to stay calm and focus on settling into our new life." As the days went by, the public relations firm worked tirelessly to manage the crisis. They issued statements, reached out to media outlets, and worked to contain the damage. The scandal was contained to some extent, but the impact was still being felt. The reckoning had come, and the fallout from my actions was now intertwined with the efforts to repair the damage. The past was resurfacing, and the consequences were becoming all too real. I was faced with the challenge of navigating this new crisis while maintaining the stability of our new life. As I watched Laura struggle with the renewed scrutiny, I felt a complex mix of emotions. The plan had worked, but the price of success was now becoming clear. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and I had to navigate it carefully to ensure that both our past and our future were handled with the delicate balance they required. The whirlwind of the scandal began to settle, leaving behind a trail of damage and a renewed sense of urgency in dealing with the fallout. The public relations firm had managed to contain the most damaging aspects, but the echoes of the past lingered, and the stress on Laura was palpable. She was caught between the remnants of her old life and the fragile new beginnings we had strived to build. In the weeks following the height of the crisis, life in our new town began to regain a sense of normalcy. The media frenzy had subsided, but the scars from the scandal were still visible. Laura was grappling with the emotional fallout, struggling to reconcile the life she had lost with the uncertain future that lay ahead. One crisp, clear morning, I decided it was time to address the situation directly. I had been reflecting on the events that had unfolded and knew that Laura deserved an honest conversation about what had happened. The time for deception and manipulation had passed. It was time to face the consequences of my actions. We sat in our cozy living room, the sun streaming through the windows and casting a warm glow over the room. Laura was curled up on the couch, reading a book, and I could see the weariness in her eyes. I took a deep breath and decided to break the silence. "Laura," I began, my voice steady but gentle. "We need to talk." She looked up, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "About what?" "About everything that's happened," I said. "The scandal, the fallout, and how we move forward from here." She put her book down and nodded. "Okay, what do you want to say?" I took a seat across from her, trying to gauge her reaction. "I've been reflecting on our situation and the impact of everything that's happened. I realize now that there were aspects of this whole ordeal that were not fair to you." Her eyes widened slightly, and she leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about the role I played in all of this," I said, choosing my words carefully. I was so focused on the plan and the outcome that I didn't fully consider the personal toll it would take on you. I understand now that my actions contributed to the pain and difficulty you faced. Laura's gaze was intense, her emotions evident. You mean you're acknowledging that you manipulated the situation? That you played a part in causing the scandal? I nodded slowly. Yes, I am. I've come to see that the way I handled things was harmful, and I want to take responsibility for that. I'm not looking for forgiveness or trying to absolve myself, but I think it's important to be honest about my actions. She sat back, her expression a mixture of surprise and contemplation. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want to move forward honestly, I said. I know that the past cannot be changed, but I believe that acknowledging the truth is the first step toward finding a resolution. I want us to rebuild not just our lives, but our relationship, with a clear understanding of what has happened. Laura was quiet for a moment, processing my words. I appreciate your honesty. It doesn't erase the hurt or the impact of what's happened, but it's a start. I know it doesn't fix everything, I said. But I want us to be on the same page. I want to support you in any way I can as we move forward. We spent the next few hours talking through the details of the past months, discussing the impact of the scandal and the steps we could take to heal. Laura expressed her frustrations and concerns, and I listened with a newfound openness. It was a difficult conversation, but it was necessary for both of us to come to terms with the reality of our situation. In the weeks that followed, we focused on rebuilding our lives with a renewed commitment to honesty and transparency. Laura continued to find her place in the community, and I supported her efforts to re-establish a sense of normalcy. We worked together to address any lingering issues from the scandal and to create a more stable and supportive environment. The resolution was not quick or easy, but it was a step toward healing. We both understood that the past would always be a part of our story, but we were determined to face it with integrity and to build a future that was rooted in truth. As time went on, the scars of the past began to fade, and the sense of uncertainty that had once plagued us started to give way to a renewed sense of hope. The journey had been arduous, but we were learning to navigate our new reality with resilience and a deeper understanding of each other. The resolution marked a turning point in our lives. The manipulation and deceit had come to light, and while the damage could not be undone, it was possible to move forward with a clearer perspective and a commitment to a more honest and meaningful future. The final chapter of this complex story was not just about the end of a plan but about the beginning of a new, more authentic chapter in our lives. The calm that had settled over our lives in the months following the scandal was deceptive. Beneath the surface, the fallout from my actions was starting to unravel in unexpected ways. The resolution we had worked so hard to achieve was now at risk, and I found myself facing consequences that I had not fully anticipated. One evening, as I was reviewing some old correspondence, I received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang, and when I answered, I found Alex standing on the doorstep, looking more serious than usual. His presence was both a surprise and a concern. "Alex, what's going on?" I asked, stepping aside to let him in. He entered, his expression grave. "Matt, we need to talk. There's been a development, and it's not good." We settled into the living room, and Alex wasted no time getting to the point. "I've been hearing rumors that some of the people we left behind are not happy with how things have turned out. They're starting to dig deeper into the past, and there's a chance they might uncover things that could be problematic for both you and Laura." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What are you saying? Are they looking into the scandal more closely?" "Yes," Alex confirmed. "There are whispers of a potential investigation. Some of your old connections are trying to dig up more dirt, and it could lead to further exposure of the manipulation and the plan you set in motion." The weight of Alex's words hit me hard. I had carefully orchestrated the events to keep them contained, but it seemed that the damage was far from over. "What can we do to prevent this from escalating?" Alex's eyes were filled with concern. "We need to be proactive. If there's an investigation or if more information comes to light, it could be disastrous. We need to manage this situation before it gets out of hand." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "What steps should we take?" "First, we need to gather all relevant information and ensure that everything is in order," Alex advised. "If there's any evidence or documentation related to the manipulation or the scandal, we need to review it and prepare for potential fallout. We should also consider consulting legal experts to navigate any potential legal issues." I nodded, feeling the urgency of the situation. "I'll start looking into this immediately. Thank you for the heads up." As Alex left, I was left with a sense of foreboding. The careful balance we had managed to maintain was now in jeopardy, and I knew that the next steps were crucial. The unraveling of our situation was beginning, and I had to act swiftly to prevent further complications. The following days were a blur of activity. I reviewed old documents, communicated with legal advisors, and tried to stay ahead of any potential revelations. The stress was overwhelming, and I could see the toll it was taking on Laura. She was aware that something was amiss, but I had chosen to keep the details from her until I had a clearer understanding of the situation. One evening, as we were having dinner, Laura looked at me with concern. "Matt, you've been on edge lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" I hesitated for a moment, weighing the decision to reveal the truth. "It's nothing major, just some ongoing issues related to the past. I'm handling it, but I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily." Laura's eyes were filled with a mix of frustration and concern. "I understand that you're trying to protect me, but I want to know what's going on. We're in this together." Her words hit home, and I realized that I needed to be honest with her. I took a deep breath and decided to lay it out. "All right, here's the situation. There's been talk of a potential investigation into the scandal and the circumstances surrounding it. Some people are trying to dig up more information, and it could lead to further exposure." Laura's face went pale, and she looked down at her plate. "So, we might have to deal with more scrutiny?" "Yes," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "But I'm doing everything I can to manage the situation and prevent it from escalating." She nodded slowly, though the worry in her eyes was evident. "What can we do to protect ourselves?" "We're taking proactive steps," I explained. "We're gathering all relevant information, consulting with legal experts, and preparing for any potential fallout. It's a challenging situation, but we're working on it." The revelation was a heavy burden for Laura to bear, and I could see the emotional strain it caused her. We spent the evening discussing possible strategies and preparing ourselves for any potential outcomes. As the weeks went by, the situation continued to develop. We worked diligently to manage the fallout, addressing any new issues that arose and trying to stay ahead of the investigation. The stress was intense, but we remained focused on finding a resolution. Despite our best efforts, the unraveling of our situation was a reminder of the complexities and consequences of our actions. The past had a way of resurfacing, and the path to resolution was fraught with challenges. The chapter of our lives was far from over, and the resolution of the unraveling was still unfolding. The impact of the scandal and the manipulation we had orchestrated was a constant reminder of the delicate balance we had to maintain as we navigated the turbulent waters of our new reality. The investigation and scrutiny had reached a fever pitch, but through diligent preparation and careful management, we had managed to avoid the worst of the fallout. The worst was behind us, but the situation had fundamentally changed. We were no longer merely trying to repair the damage, we were facing a new reality with a different set of challenges. As the storm of the past settled, Laura and I found ourselves at a crossroads. The life we had once known was irrevocably altered, and we had to adapt to a new order, one that demanded resilience and reinvention. The old social circles were a distant memory, and we had to forge a new path in this reshaped world. One crisp winter morning, I decided it was time to discuss our future with Laura. We had managed to stabilize our situation, but now it was essential to plan for the long term. The discussion would be pivotal in setting the direction for the rest of our lives. We sat at the kitchen table, the warmth of the morning sun filtering through the frosted windows. I looked at Laura, who was sipping her coffee with a contemplative expression. "Laura," I began, "we've come a long way since everything started. The worst of the storm seems to be behind us, but we need to talk about where we go from here." She put her coffee cup down and looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "What do you have in mind?" "We've managed to contain the damage and stabilize our situation," I said. "But now we need to focus on creating a new future for ourselves. We can't keep looking back, we need to look forward and build something positive from this." Laura nodded slowly. "I agree, but where do we start?" "I've been thinking about our options," I said. "We could use this as an opportunity to reinvent ourselves. We've been given a fresh start, and we should make the most of it. That means considering new opportunities and perhaps even relocating again if it feels right." She tilted her head thoughtfully. "Relocating again? Are you serious?" "Yes," I said, choosing my words carefully. I know it sounds drastic, but it might be worth considering if it means finding a place where we can truly start over and build a new life. We've been through so much, and we deserve a chance to redefine ourselves without the baggage of the past. Laura's eyes were filled with contemplation. It's a big decision, but I see your point. We've been trying to piece together a life from the remnants of what we lost. Maybe it's time to create something entirely new. We spent the rest of the day discussing our options. We explored potential new locations, job opportunities, and ways to reinvent our lives. It was a process filled with hope and uncertainty, but it was also invigorating. The idea of starting anew, on our own terms, was both daunting and exciting. In the following weeks, we began taking concrete steps toward our new plan. We researched potential locations, made inquiries about job prospects, and started to think about what we wanted in our new life. The process was both challenging and liberating. One of the most significant changes was reevaluating our professional paths. With the upheaval of our past, it was clear that we needed to redefine our careers. I began exploring new business ventures, considering opportunities that aligned with my skills and interests. Laura looked into new fields that intrigued her, hoping to find something that would ignite her passion. As we navigated this new phase, we also took time to reflect on the lessons learned from our experiences. The turmoil had revealed much about ourselves and each other, and we were determined to use that knowledge to build a stronger foundation for our future. One evening, as we sat together planning our next steps, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, despite everything that happened, I feel like we've grown. We've faced so much, and we're still here, trying to make the best of it." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection and appreciation. I feel the same way. We've been through a lot, but we've also learned a great deal. This new order, this new life we're creating, is a testament to our resilience. The transition to this new phase of our lives was both a challenge and an opportunity. We were no longer defined by the past or the manipulation that had shaped our experiences. Instead, we were taking control of our future, armed with the lessons we had learned and the determination to build a life that was authentic and meaningful. As the months went by, the new order began to take shape. We found ourselves embracing the changes and looking forward to the future with renewed optimism. The past had left its mark, but it no longer dictated our present or our future. We were creating a new chapter, one that was defined by our choices, our resilience, and our commitment to moving forward with integrity. The journey had been arduous, but it had led us to a place of renewed hope and possibility. The new order was not just about starting over, it was about building a life that reflected who we had become and who we aspired to be. With our plans in motion and the new chapter of our lives beginning to unfold, we faced the inevitable aftermath of our past actions. The carefully constructed facade of a fresh start was now a reality, but the echoes of the scandal and the manipulation we had orchestrated still lingered, affecting our lives in ways we hadn't fully anticipated. The new order we had embraced was a significant departure from our previous life. We had settled into a new city and begun to establish new routines. The fresh start was invigorating, but it also came with a sense of unresolved tension, a reminder of the complex web of our past. One rainy afternoon, as I was sorting through some old files, I received a phone call that brought a new wave of concern. It was an investigator from the city's legal department, requesting a meeting with me regarding a matter of ongoing inquiry. "Hello, Mr. Thompson," the investigator said. "I understand you've recently relocated to the area. We need to discuss some matters related to a past investigation." My heart raced. Despite our efforts to manage the fallout, it seemed that the past was far from forgotten. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "When would you like to meet?" The investigator scheduled a meeting for the following week. I spent the days leading up to it in a state of apprehension, revisiting the documentation and information related to the scandal. I knew that facing this inquiry would be challenging, but I had to address it with honesty and transparency. When the day of the meeting arrived, I went to the legal office with a sense of foreboding. The investigator, a stern but professional woman named Ms. Carter, greeted me and led me to a conference room. "Mr. Thompson," she said as we sat down, "we're conducting a review of past incidents related to the scandal and the manipulation that occurred. We need to ensure that all aspects have been thoroughly addressed." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "I understand. I'm here to provide any information that's needed." Ms. Carter began by asking detailed questions about the events leading up to the scandal, the manipulation, and the aftermath. I answered as honestly as I could, providing relevant documents and explanations. It was a grueling process, but I knew it was necessary to clear the air and address any lingering concerns. After the meeting, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The inquiry had been thorough, but I hoped it would bring a sense of closure. I was aware that the outcome would be beyond my control, but I had done my best to be transparent and cooperative. As I left the office, I called Laura to update her on the situation. She was understandably anxious, but I reassured her that we were doing everything possible to address the inquiry and move forward. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in our new city was filled with a sense of waiting. The inquiry had been completed, but the results were yet to be determined. We continued with our new routines, focusing on our work and the process of building our new life. One evening, a letter arrived from the legal department. It was an official document outlining the findings of the inquiry. My hands shook as I opened it, bracing myself for the contents. The letter confirmed that the investigation had been completed, and while it acknowledged the complexities of the situation, it concluded that there was no substantial evidence of wrongdoing beyond what had already been addressed. The matter was considered resolved, and no further legal action would be taken. A wave of relief washed over me as I read the letter. The past had been thoroughly reviewed, and the resolution brought a sense of closure. It was a significant step forward, allowing us to fully embrace our new life without the constant shadow of the past. I shared the news with Laura, and we both felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. The aftermath of the scandal had been a long and difficult journey. But we had navigated it with resilience and determination. As we looked to the future, we knew that the effects of the past would always be a part of our story. However, the resolution of the inquiry allowed us to focus on building a future that was grounded in our present reality, free from the constraints of unresolved issues. The final chapter of this tumultuous period was not just about finding closure, it was about moving forward with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. We had faced the challenges of our past, addressed the lingering concerns, and emerged stronger and more resolute in our commitment to creating a meaningful and fulfilling life. The aftermath had been a test of our resilience, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and transformation. As we embraced the next chapter, we did so with a sense of gratitude for the lessons learned and a determination to build a future defined by our choices and our renewed sense of self. With the legal matters resolved and the past behind us, Laura and I were ready to embrace the new chapter of our lives. The resolution of the inquiry allowed us to finally focus on building a future that was not overshadowed by past mistakes. We were free to redefine ourselves and our relationship without the burden of old controversies. The new beginning was both exhilarating and daunting. We had the freedom to reinvent our lives, but we also had to confront the reality of starting from scratch. The city we had moved to was beautiful and full of opportunities. But it was also unfamiliar and required adjustment. One crisp morning, as we enjoyed coffee on our new balcony overlooking the city, Laura turned to me with a hopeful smile. "Matt, we've come so far. I think it's time we start making concrete plans for our future. What's next on our list?" I looked out at the cityscape, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I agree. We've laid the groundwork for a fresh start, but now we need to focus on setting goals and building our new life." We spent the day outlining our priorities and goals. Our discussions ranged from career aspirations to personal development, and we worked on creating a roadmap for the future. The process was invigorating, and it felt empowering to plan our next steps with a clear vision. One of the first decisions we made was to establish new professional paths. I had always been passionate about entrepreneurship, and I decided to pursue a new business venture. Laura, too, was eager to explore new career opportunities that aligned with her interests and skills. We both agreed that finding fulfilling work was a key component of our new beginning. We also focused on building a supportive social network. The old connections from our past life were gone, but we were determined to create new relationships and integrate into our new community. We attended local events, joined clubs, and reached out to people with shared interests. It was a process of rebuilding, but it was also an opportunity to start fresh and make meaningful connections. As we settled into our new routines, we found that the process of rebuilding was both challenging and rewarding. The sense of freedom and possibility was invigorating, but it also required patience and persistence. We faced obstacles along the way, but we tackled them together with a renewed sense of purpose. One evening, as we sat together reflecting on our progress, Laura said, "Matt, I'm really proud of how far we've come. It hasn't been easy, but we've managed to turn things around and create something positive from the challenges we faced." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. I feel the same way. It's been a tough journey, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. We've learned so much about ourselves and each other, and we've emerged stronger for it. The new beginning was not just about creating a new life, it was also about redefining our relationship. The trials we had faced had brought us closer together, and we were committed to nurturing our connection and supporting each other as we moved forward. As we looked ahead, we embraced the possibilities that lay before us. The future was a blank canvas, and we were excited to paint it with new experiences, opportunities, and achievements. The past had shaped us, but it no longer dictated our path. We were in control of our own destiny, and we were determined to make the most of it. The final chapter of our journey was not about leaving the past behind, it was about integrating the lessons we had learned and using them to build a meaningful and fulfilling life. We had faced adversity and emerged stronger, and now we were ready to embrace the new beginning with optimism and resolve. The story of our new beginning was one of resilience, growth, and hope. It was a testament to our ability to overcome challenges and create a future that was defined by our choices and our commitment to moving forward with integrity and purpose. As we embarked on this new chapter, we did so with a renewed sense of excitement and possibility. The future was bright, and we were ready to face it together, armed with the lessons of the past and the promise of a new beginning. With our new life beginning to take shape, Laura and I embraced the opportunities and challenges of our new environment. The sense of renewal and possibility was invigorating, and we were determined to make the most of this fresh start. However, we soon realized that embracing this new chapter required more than just creating new routines. It involved adapting to the evolving dynamics of our personal and professional lives. As we settled into our new city, we quickly realized that establishing ourselves wasn't just about finding new jobs and making friends, it was also about redefining our identity and purpose. We had to balance our professional goals with personal growth and adapt to the shifting landscape of our lives. One of the most significant changes was the way we approached our careers. I was deeply invested in my new business venture, which was starting to show promising results. The challenges of entrepreneurship were both exciting and demanding, and I poured my energy into building a successful enterprise. Laura, meanwhile, had found a new career path that aligned with her passions. Her work was fulfilling, and she thrived in her new role, finding both satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. Despite our individual successes, we recognized the importance of maintaining a strong relationship. The trials we had faced had tested our bond, but they had also strengthened it. We made a concerted effort to prioritize our time together and ensure that our relationship remained a central focus in our lives. We scheduled regular date nights, took weekend trips, and engaged in activities that allowed us to reconnect and share meaningful experiences. These moments were essential for maintaining our emotional connection and reinforcing our commitment to each other. It was a deliberate effort to nurture our relationship amidst the demands of our new life. As we continued to build our new chapter, we also took time to reflect on the lessons learned from our past experiences. The journey had taught us valuable insights about ourselves and our relationship. We were more mindful of our actions, more aware of our values, and more committed to living authentically. One evening, as we relaxed at home, Laura turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Matt, have you noticed how different things are now compared to where we started? It feels like we've really turned a corner." I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. "Yes, it does. We've worked hard to get to this point, and it's rewarding to see the positive changes in our lives. It's a testament to our resilience and our ability to adapt." Laura smiled. "I'm proud of how we've handled everything. We've faced so many challenges, but we've come out stronger. It's a new chapter for us, and I'm excited to see where it takes us." We both felt a renewed sense of optimism and hope. The new chapter was not just about the absence of the past, it was about the presence of new opportunities and experiences. We were writing our own story, and we were determined to make it a meaningful and fulfilling one. As we continued to navigate this new phase of our lives, we remained focused on our goals and aspirations. We embraced the opportunities that came our way and faced any challenges with a positive attitude. Our new chapter was defined by our ability to adapt, our commitment to each other, and our dedication to creating a life that reflected our true selves. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had also been transformative. We had learned from our experiences, grown as individuals, and strengthened our relationship. The new chapter was a testament to our ability to overcome adversity and create a future that was filled with promise and potential. As we looked ahead, we were excited for the future and ready to embrace whatever came our way. The past had shaped us, but it no longer defined us. We were in control of our own narrative, and we were determined to write a story that was characterized by resilience, growth, and the pursuit of happiness. The new chapter was not just a continuation of our lives, it was a celebration of our journey and a testament to our commitment to building a meaningful and fulfilling future. As we turned the page, we did so with a sense of anticipation and a deep appreciation for the opportunities that lay ahead. With the foundation of our new life firmly established, Laura and I found ourselves in a place where we could truly focus on moving on from the past. The journey had been long and challenging, but we had managed to create a fresh start that was both fulfilling and hopeful. The final step was to ensure that we fully embraced this new phase of our lives and left behind any remnants of the past that might hold us back. Our new routine was filled with activities that enriched our lives and helped us to further integrate into our new community. We became involved in local organizations, participated in community events, and even took on new hobbies that allowed us to explore different aspects of ourselves. The process of moving on was not just about leaving the past behind, it was about actively building a life that we were excited about. One evening, as we sat on our porch enjoying a quiet moment, Laura turned to me with a reflective expression. "Matt, I've been thinking a lot about everything we've been through. I know we've worked hard to move on, but there's something I want to discuss." I looked at her with curiosity. "What's on your mind?" "I've been considering how important it is for us to completely close the chapter on the past," Laura said. "It's not just about the physical relocation or the new jobs. It's about making sure that we're truly free from the shadows of what happened." I nodded in agreement. "I understand. We've made significant progress, but it's crucial that we don't let any unresolved issues linger. We need to ensure that we're fully embracing our new life and leaving the past where it belongs." To that end, we decided to take a few concrete steps to fully move on from the past. The first was to ensure that all remaining ties to our previous life were resolved. This included clearing up any outstanding financial matters, finalizing any lingering legal issues, and addressing any unfinished business that might still be a source of stress. We also took time to reflect on our personal growth and how we could continue to move forward positively. We set new personal and professional goals and made plans to achieve them. This involved not only focusing on our careers but also on personal development. We explored new interests, took up activities we had always wanted to try, and set aside time for self-care and reflection. One of the most meaningful steps we took was to participate in a community service project. It was a way for us to give back and contribute positively to our new environment. The experience was fulfilling and allowed us to connect with others in a meaningful way. It also reinforced our commitment to moving forward with purpose and integrity. As we continued to build our new life, we found that the process of moving on was both liberating and empowering. We were no longer defined by our past experiences but were instead focused on creating a future that reflected our values and aspirations. One afternoon, we attended a local event where we had the opportunity to meet new people and share our experiences. It was a chance to connect with others who had their own stories of transformation and growth. The conversations we had were both inspiring and reassuring, and they reinforced our sense of belonging in our new community. As the weeks went by, the sense of closure and renewal became more pronounced. We were fully immersed in our new life, and the remnants of the past gradually faded into the background. The challenges we had faced had become valuable lessons that we carried with us, but they no longer held power over our present or future. One evening, as we reflected on our journey, Laura turned to me with a contented smile. "Matt, I feel like we've finally achieved what we set out to do. We've moved on from the past and created something truly special together." I took her hand and smiled back. "I couldn't agree more. It's been a journey, but it's one that has brought us closer and allowed us to build a life that we're proud of. I'm grateful for everything we've learned and for the future we're creating." As we looked ahead, we were filled with a sense of optimism and excitement. The process of moving on had been a crucial part of our journey, and it had allowed us to fully embrace the opportunities of our new life. We were ready to face the future with confidence and enthusiasm, knowing that we had the strength and resilience to overcome any challenges that came our way. The final chapter of our story was not just about leaving the past behind, it was about celebrating the new beginning we had created and looking forward to a future that was filled with promise and potential. We had successfully navigated the trials of our journey and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the next chapter of our lives with hope and determination. After navigating the tumultuous journey of rebuilding our lives, Laura and I reached a point where the focus shifted from simply moving on to finding a deeper sense of peace and contentment. The challenges of the past had taught us much, and the effort we had put into creating a new beginning had finally begun to bear fruit. Now, it was time to cultivate a state of inner peace and genuine happiness. One serene morning, as we enjoyed our breakfast on the porch, Laura broke the comfortable silence. "Matt, I've been thinking about how far we've come. It feels like we've achieved so much, but I wonder if we've truly found peace." I looked out over the peaceful landscape, reflecting on her words. It's a good question. We've worked hard to rebuild and create a fulfilling life, but peace is more than just achieving goals. It's about finding a deeper sense of tranquility and acceptance. Laura nodded thoughtfully. Exactly. I feel like we've done a great job of moving forward, but I want us to make sure we're also nurturing our inner peace. It's not just about external success, it's about feeling content and at ease with ourselves. To explore this idea, we decided to incorporate practices into our daily routine that would help us cultivate peace and mindfulness. We began by setting aside time each day for reflection and relaxation. We explored meditation and mindfulness techniques, finding that they helped us center ourselves and manage stress more effectively. We also made a conscious effort to focus on the present moment and appreciate the simple joys in life. Whether it was taking long walks in nature, enjoying a quiet evening at home, or spending time with friends, we learned to savor these experiences and find contentment in the here and now. Another important aspect of finding peace was letting go of any lingering negative emotions or grudges. We took time to address any unresolved feelings and worked on forgiveness, both for ourselves and others. This process was liberating and allowed us to free ourselves from the weight of past grievances. We also focused on nurturing our relationship and supporting each other in our personal growth. Open communication, empathy, and mutual respect became central to our interactions. By fostering a loving and supportive environment, we were able to strengthen our bond and create a sense of harmony in our lives. One evening, as we sat together reflecting on our journey, Laura shared her thoughts. "Matt, I feel like we're finally reaching a place of true peace. It's not just about the changes we've made or the successes we've achieved. It's about how we've learned to appreciate and embrace each moment." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of contentment. I agree. The journey has been challenging, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. Finding peace is about more than just overcoming obstacles, it's about finding joy and fulfillment in our everyday lives. As we continued to explore ways to nurture our inner peace, we found that the process was ongoing. It required regular attention and intention, but it was also deeply rewarding. The sense of tranquility and contentment that came from our efforts enriched our lives in ways we hadn't fully anticipated. Our journey to finding peace was not just about achieving a destination, it was about embracing a way of life. It was about learning to navigate life's ups and downs with grace and resilience, and finding joy in the present moment. As we looked ahead, we felt a renewed sense of purpose and optimism. The challenges of the past had shaped us, but they had also equipped us with the tools to create a life filled with peace and fulfillment. We were ready to continue this journey with a deep sense of gratitude and a commitment to nurturing our well-being. The final chapter of our story was not just a conclusion, it was a celebration of the peace and contentment we had found. It was a testament to our ability to overcome adversity and create a life that was characterized by joy, harmony, and a profound sense of inner peace. As we moved forward, we did so with the knowledge that true peace comes from within and is nurtured by our actions and attitudes. We were ready to embrace the future with a sense of calm and fulfillment, knowing that we had the strength and wisdom to face whatever came our way.